Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that must mean it's time for another Food for Thought Friday. Alright, well, we're looking at performance management and the question of will versus skill. Or we might simply call this a brief 5-minute primer on performance management and competencies. And before we get into it, I have to state the views expressed within are solely those of the content creator and should not be misconstrued as legal advice, nor are they necessarily representative of any organization or professional membership group. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. This is not legal advice. The performance of an employee or team member can be challenging at the best of times. Prior to a decision on how to address underperformance, managers need to first determine the source of underperformance. And a common metric to determine the source of underperformance is the use of a framework of will versus skill. Is the performance a matter of will? The team member knows what to do and how to do it to meet the expected performance requirement, yet chooses to do otherwise. Or is the underperformance a matter of skill? The team member may know what to do, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. According to this framework, we should expect successful execution so long as the team member understands the level of performance which is expected and how to achieve these results. And this is exactly how much performance management is structured. A team member underperforms, and we clarify the expectation, explaining what needs to be accomplished and how it's to be executed. When the team member inevitably fails to meet our expected levels of deliverable, we conclude that the performance gap must obviously be the result of an unwillingness to execute. After all, we have made sure to explain the what and the how. Now, if you're still reading and you're still watching, I've got some good news. Because even though the above described model is incomplete and problematic, I will explain a superior model shortly. In Canada, federal legislation outlines 2 categories of performance in a performance management model, and they are misconduct and incompetence. By the way, incompetence is not a slanderous word, it is a technical term. Misconduct takes place when an employee breaks the rules for keeping the workplace safe and efficient. Misconduct may be means for termination with cause depending on the frequency and or the severity. And some jurisdictions also require that an employer demonstrates that the misconduct was willfully premeditated. That is willfully premeditated. Incompetence takes place and is demonstrated when an employee lacks the skills and or the abilities needed to do the job. Demonstrating misconduct will often require the ability to prove that the performance gap or violation was not just the result of ignorance. Did the employee know the rules, and did they know that they were breaking them? And supporting evidence for such a claim might include signed policies and or previous performance documentation. Now, severe misconduct, such as violation of federal or provincial law, may require less documentation from the employer. An employer generally isn't required to have an explicit policy prohibiting blatant theft, as such prohibitions are already covered in federal and provincial law. Demonstrating incompetence will often require a heavier lift. After all, what exactly is incompetence? Well, competency modeling refers to the requisite task-relevant knowledge, skills, and abilities for success in any specific domain. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. So knowledge then refers to the mental or theoretical understanding which can be obtained through the reading of manuals, instructional manuals, policies, or watching instructional training videos such as this one, or reading posts such as this one. That's knowledge. Skills refer to behaviors which are learned through applied practice. It is possible to have knowledge but lack skill, just as it's possible to have skill but lack knowledge. Two distinct constructs. Abilities refers to the actual skills that have been developed and the knowledge that's been acquired, reflecting what a person can do at any given moment. Using this framework, albeit more involved, may require that adequate time and resources is provided for the underperformer to acquire and hone the requisite skill. So looking at the framework of skill versus will, does it hold up? Well, absent any other framework, it might be an acceptable guiding outline. Perhaps it might not be the worst thing, and perhaps it's better than nothing at all. However, a far more robust and legally defensible framework might be will versus competency. Or, as the Canadian federal government outlines, misconduct versus incompetence. So there we go. There we have it. I hope that helps, and I hope, if nothing else, it has at least been food for thought. Follow me for more.